Idaho lawmakers are debating a bill that would criminalize transgender individuals using bathrooms that match their gender identity in private businesses. The bill faces opposition from law enforcement and LGBTQ+ advocacy groups who argue it would place undue burdens on transgender people and complicate enforcement for law officers. The Senate is expected to vote on the bill this week, potentially sending it to Governor Brad Little for approval. This bill would extend bathroom restrictions from public facilities to private businesses, making Idaho the first state to do so. At least 19 other states have similar laws for public facilities, but only 3 have criminal penalties. Law enforcement groups say the bill could create challenges in enforcement, requiring officers to determine someone's biological sex or level of dire need. Opponents also fear it may lead to increased profiling and discrimination against transgender individuals. If passed, anyone who violates the law could face jail time, with penalties ranging from a year in jail for a misdemeanor to up to 5 years for a felony second offense. The bill's passage could impact transgender individuals' safety and employment opportunities in private businesses. Supporters argue the bill upholds privacy and safety standards, while opponents see it as discriminatory and impractical. The debate reflects a broader national conversation on transgender rights and the tension between privacy and inclusivity. United States President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of over 1,000 paratroopers to Iran. Meanwhile, also proposing a 15-point peace plan to the Iranian regime. The peace proposal was swiftly rejected by Iran, adding to the confusion over Trump's strategy. The troop deployment and diplomatic efforts highlight the Trump administration's challenges in managing the conflict. Republicans in Congress have expressed mixed reactions to the troop deployment, underscoring internal party tensions. The peace plan, which included demands for Iran to abandon its nuclear program and allow the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, was dismissed by Tehran, and this maintains its own conditions for ending the war. This rejection has deepened uncertainty about the direction of United States-Iran relations. The deployment of ground troops aims to create conditions for reopening the strategic Strait of Hormuz. However, it also poses risks to United States forces. Experts caution that Trump's approach lacks a clear, long-term strategy, reflecting the unpredictable nature of the conflict. The next steps remain uncertain, with the situation emphasizing the broader geopolitical stakes and internal divisions within the Republican Party. President Trump has ordered the immediate payment of TSA agents amid significant travel disruptions caused by the ongoing government shutdown. The shutdown, which began in February due to disagreements over the Department of Homeland Security's budget, has seen hundreds of TSA workers quit their positions. Travelers are now facing unprecedented delays, with some airports reporting wait times exceeding 4 hours. The partial shutdown has left TSA, an essential service, understaffed and struggling to maintain security at major airports across the United States. While the order aims to alleviate the immediate crisis, its legality remains uncertain. The directive could face court challenges under the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits spending money that Congress has not appropriated. This move highlights the broader implications of the shutdown on federal operations and public services. With the situation unresolved, it remains unclear when TSA agents will receive their regular pay and whether this action will fully address the ongoing travel chaos. President Trump has extended the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz until April 6. The announcement came after an hours-long cabinet meeting, during which officials discussed ongoing negotiations with Iran. The extension follows recent U.S. airstrikes in the region, which Iran responded to with retaliatory missile strikes on Israel. These strikes resulted in civilian casualties, including 1 death and 25 injuries. Additionally, the Israeli Defense Forces killed Iran's Navy chief, Al-Ayers Siri, in a targeted operation. The conflict in the Strait of Hormuz centers on Iran's control over a critical oil shipping route, which affects global energy markets. Pakistan has taken on a mediator role to ease tensions and facilitate the escalation. The next step involves continued negotiations and the potential for further military action if the deadline is not met. The situation remains tense, with significant implications for regional stability and global oil supplies. An 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling on Wednesday upheld the Trump administration's policy of detaining immigrants without bond. This decision overturns a previous lower court ruling that required bond hearings for arrested immigrants. The appeals court ruled in favor of the Department of Homeland Security, allowing the continued detention of immigrants without bond hearings. This policy has been a subject of debate for years, with past administrations generally offering bond hearings to non-citizens without criminal records. The ruling, which follows a similar decision from the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, has significant implications. It means that over 30,000 habeas corpus petitions filed since Trump took office may no longer be upheld, potentially leading to an increase in the number of immigrants detained without bond hearings. Dissenting Judge Ralph R. Erickson criticized the ruling, noting its deviation from past legal interpretations and its broad impact on millions of immigrants. Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the decision, stating it aligns with the Trump administration's law and order agenda. The ACLU, which represented Joaquin Herrera Avila in the case, has yet to comment on the ruling. Avila, a Mexican national detained in Minneapolis, was initially granted a bond hearing by a lower court, but this decision was overturned by the appeals court. A federal judge in North Carolina has upheld the state's photo voter ID law, dismissing claims of discriminatory intent. The decision is seen as a victory for Republican lawmakers who passed the law in late 2018. The ruling by U.S. District Judge Loretta Biggs came after a lawsuit filed by the NAACP, which argued the law was enacted to suppress minority voter turnout. That's despite acknowledging that the burden to obtain ID falls more on Black and Hispanic voters. The judge ruled in favor of the state. Republican legislative leaders praised the decision, stating it confirms the constitutionality of the voter ID requirement. The state NAACP expressed disappointment, emphasizing that the ruling could lead to significant barriers for minority voters in the upcoming elections. The implications of this decision extend beyond North Carolina, potentially influencing similar legal debates in other states. Some analysts suggest it could embolden other states to pass voter ID laws, though no immediate appeals have been announced. With the federal litigation now concluded, the voter ID law will continue to be enforced, impacting upcoming elections and voter participation. In the ongoing conflict between Iran and the United States, Iranian state media reports that if a ground invasion by U.S. forces begins, Iranian forces have a surprise plan for American troops. The conflict, now in its 27th day, has seen continued airstrikes on Iranian targets and retaliatory attacks by Iranian-backed groups in the region. Iran has rejected a 15-point proposal from the U.S. demanding reparations and control over the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian forces Hezbollah, Iraqi militia groups have reportedly carried out 230 operations targeting U.S. interests and Israeli positions in the past 24 hours. Negotiations continue through intermediaries like Pakistan, but details of the talks remain unclear. Both sides are making significant demands, and it's uncertain how these conflicting proposals will be resolved. Iran's growing confidence is evident in its warnings and the boldness of its statements regarding potential ground invasion scenarios. A massive heat dome has caused historic high temperatures across much of the United States, breaking multiple March records. Temperatures are 20 to 40 degrees above normal in the Great Plains, with some areas reaching triple digits. Bernadette Woods-Plackey, chief meteorologist at Climate Central, explains that this heat wave is part of a series of extreme weather events linked to climate change. The additional greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are intensifying the heat, pushing temperatures to unprecedented levels for early spring. Experts predict continued hot weather into early April, which could have significant impacts on snowpack and water resources in the West. Early melting of the snowpack increases wildfire risks in the region, as crucial water reserves are depleted earlier than usual. This heat wave highlights a broader pattern of climate-induced extreme weather events. This includes El Niño-related warming expected later in the year. With this unprecedented heat wave, it's clear that climate change is amplifying the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events. affecting communities across the country. New York has joined 12 other states and Washington, D.C., in legalizing medically assisted suicide for terminally ill patients. The decision has sparked ongoing debates between supporters and opponents, each side presenting compelling arguments. Supporters like Delda Lashmut, a resident of Portland, Oregon, argue that the practice offers a compassionate end-of-life option for those facing a painful and inevitable death. Lashmut, diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, is planning to take a lethal dose of medication, seeing it as a way to avoid prolonged suffering. Opponents, including Father Peter Clark of St. Joseph's University, express ethical concerns and fear a slippery slope towards allowing medically assisted suicide for individuals with mental health conditions. They argue that the law could exert undue pressure on people with disabilities, potentially compelling them to end their lives prematurely. The ongoing debate reflects broader societal attitudes towards end-of-life care and autonomy. As more states consider legalizing medically assisted suicide, the issue remains contentious, with both sides presenting valid perspectives and concerns. Major League Baseball has rolled out an automated ball strike system to assist umpires with pitch calls. The system was first used in a regular season game on opening day, March 26, 2026. The ABS uses electronic monitors to track the exact location of pitches. Teams can challenge up to 2 ball or strike calls per 9 innings. Former Dodgers general manager Dan Evans explains the impact of this technology. According to Evans, the system has been tested in the minor leagues and in spring training. Players and umpires have found it to be accurate, with challenges overturning about 50% of calls. Catchers and pitchers are better at judging ball-strike decisions compared to hitters. The implementation of the ABS aims to enhance the fairness and consistency of ball-strike calls in the game. As the system becomes more familiar to players and fans, it is expected to become an integral part of MLB, striking a balance between traditional umpiring and modern technology. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty of Ohio has filed a motion in federal court to remove President Trump's name from the Kennedy Center, arguing that the decision violates Congress's intent for the center to be named solely for President John F. Kennedy. The move comes as the Kennedy Center's board of directors, handpicked by Trump, voted to rename the venue in December 2025. The Kennedy Center, a cultural landmark since 1971, is currently undergoing a 2-year renovation. Trump's name was added to the center's facade and website shortly after the board's decision in December. Beatty's motion highlights the ongoing political tensions and debates over the memorialization of historical and cultural landmarks in Washington, D.C. Beatty's legal action asserts that Congress was clear in its intent that the center should remain a memorial for President Kennedy and no other name should appear on the building's exterior walls. The move to rename the center has faced opposition from Democrats and some members of the Kennedy family, who argue that it undermines the institution's purpose. The next step will be for a federal judge to review Representative Beatty's motion and determine whether to enforce the law and reverse the illegal renaming of the Kennedy Center. The conflict in Iran has drawn global attention away from Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine, entering its 5th year. Russia and Ukraine have engaged in intense military exchanges, with Russia firing nearly 1,000 drones and 34 missiles at Ukraine, followed by Ukraine's retaliatory attack with almost 400 drones. The U.S. has redirected resources, including Patriot air defense missiles, to the Middle East. This raises concerns in Ukraine about the availability of such defenses. Ukraine's industrial heartland in the Donbas region is under critical pressure from Russian forces, with fighting intensifying along the roughly 1,250 kilometers front line. The redirection of U.S. military resources to the Middle East has left Ukraine concerned about the availability of crucial defense systems. Russian forces are in an early phase of a spring offensive, assaulting Ukraine's eastern so-called fortress belt of cities, with only incremental gains made across rural areas. Moscow's forces occupy about 20% of Ukraine, including the Crimean Peninsula. Russia has rejected Ukraine's offer of a ceasefire. U.S.-led peace efforts are largely on hold, while the White House is totally distracted by Iran. According to a retired vice admiral, this shift in global focus raises concerns about Ukraine's defense capabilities and the future of the ongoing conflict. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, now supports a revised House aviation safety bill aimed at preventing mid-air collisions. The bill, which has passed through key House committees, includes requirements for all aircraft near busy airports to have automatic dependent surveillance broadcast in NTSB and systems. Families of the 67 victims of last year's Washington, D.C. mid-air collision are pushing for stricter implementation timelines to ensure reforms are completed promptly. The bill's revised version now addresses NTSB recommendations, requiring the Federal Aviation Administration, Transportation Department, the military to take actions based on these recommendations. Victims' families argue that any delays in implementation could cost lives. They are encouraged by the changes, but want clear statutory timelines and performance standards that leave no room for process to become an obstacle. The revised bill will now advance to the full House for a vote and will need to be reconciled with the Senate version before becoming law. Conservative leaders and activists at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, in Dallas, Texas, expressed mixed opinions about the current state of the economy under President Donald Trump. The conference, a significant gathering for the conservative movement, saw attendees divided on the issue of affordability and economic policies. Some conference participants expressed confidence in Trump's economic strategies, arguing that despite high prices, the economy was still better than what they expected under a Biden administration. However, others voiced concerns over the rising costs of basic necessities like housing and food, hoping for improvements in affordability. The diverse opinions reflect a broader divide within the conservative movement regarding the economic legacy of the Trump administration and expectations for the future. As CPAC continues, the debate over the economy under President Trump is likely to remain a key point of discussion among attendees. Donald Trump is set to become the first sitting U.S. president to have his signature on U.S. banknotes. This marks a historic change. The Treasury Department announced that starting in June, Trump's signature will appear alongside that of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on new $100 bills. This decision, which coincides with the 250th anniversary of the United States founding, represents a break from tradition. Traditionally, U.S. banknotes have carried the signatures of Treasury officials alone. The move is part of the administration's efforts to associate Trump's name with government programs and symbols. Critics argue that the decision could undermine the impartiality traditionally associated with U.S. currency and government symbols. Gavin Newsom, the Democratic governor of California and a longtime Trump critic, has voiced concerns about the move. This suggests it could lead to increased economic burden on Americans. The new banknotes will begin to circulate in June, with Trump's signature alongside that of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. This marks a significant symbolic gesture by the Trump administration. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Pentagon's effort to ban Anthropic's AI tools, citing concerns over the First Amendment. Judge Rita Lynn's ruling on March 27, 2026, came in response to Anthropic's lawsuit against the United States Department of Defense. This argued the ban was an attempt to restrict public debate and violate the company's constitutional rights. The lawsuit stems from a disagreement over new contract terms that the Pentagon sought to impose on Anthropic. The company's refusal to accept these terms led the government to label Anthropic a supply chain risk, a designation traditionally reserved for foreign adversaries. This decision has caused significant harm to Anthropic's business and raised constitutional questions about the government's authority to regulate tech companies. Judge Lynn's order highlights the tension between national security and free speech protections. She noted that the government's actions went beyond what was necessary to address security concerns and amounted to an effort to chill public debate. The temporary injunction means Anthropic's tools, widely used in government and military operations, will continue to be available until the case is resolved. This ruling sets a precedent for how the First Amendment applies to government actions against tech companies. This underscores the delicate balance between protecting national security and upholding constitutional rights.